Are you a lawyer serving clients and looking for a way to grow your firm by opening up new locations, but maybe you're confused or you're unsure on how to select a new city to open up in? Well, this video is all about that. My name is Jeff Hughes, and I'm your host of the J. Sterling Hughes Show, and we are a family law firm that has grown from 0 to 25 lawyers. And my guest today is my partner and co-founder, Tony Karls. Tony is the president of Rocket Clicks, our digital agency, and he helps other law firms in doing just this. And he's here to talk about the factors that he selects when opening up a new location. He looks at the demographics, the age, the income, the marriage rates in that particular area, and this is like the key one, the proximate drive time. And so, Tony, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on again. So, Tony, over the years, we've opened up what we consider to be 4 regional offices and 20 plus satellite offices. And one of the questions that I get all the time is how we've done that well and made it work profitably. And you were the architect of all of these openings. And so thanks for coming back on the show and
Yeah,
talking about what we've done together in building this.
yeah. I agree.
For our listeners, if you could kind of lay open your playbook on how you selected the different territories and small cities and offices that we opened and kind of walk through the whole territorial analysis.
Yeah. So the place we start is trying to understand where does traffic come from, the qualified traffic, where is it coming from online? So that's one of the biggest factors. We know on Google, when there's a map present on a search, about 42% of the clicks are going to be in that map pack or in the more services area. So understanding that's really important to start your analysis. Then what we want to do is kind of understand the demographics of that area, percentage that are married, how old are they, what's their household incomes look like, and what's the actual population size of a potential area.
So within those demographics you're talking about, what are the ranges you're looking for when you decide, okay, we're going to open up in that community?
Yeah.
So is there a certain percentage of married, that's what I'm trying to get
So
at.
what we're actually trying to do is we kind of put this all in a spreadsheet. And like, here's an example of one we just recently did for a client. When we looked at the map and the reach of the map, we determined with a travel time analysis tool, one of the biggest things that determines how big of an area your potential Google business profile will serve is what is the normative drive time for potential service in an area. So what does that mean? So in Appleton, Wisconsin, in the Fox Valley of Wisconsin, it's a lot more normal for you to expect to drive 15, 20 plus minutes to go to a grocery store because it's a much more spread out community.
Yeah.
Well, that means you're more willing to drive to a law firm. When you're in a super dense city like Chicago, and this is where we really learned this. We went to Chicago. We did all the things we typically do. We ranked in the first page organically, and we did it in the maps. We didn't see anything happen.
Yeah, we did it in the downtown area of Chicago, which is called the Loop, which is highly dense and really, really tough to get into.
So what we found there was, we did all the stuff that we normally do. It worked to get us on the page. But what we actually found is because of what normative travel looks like when we use a tool called Smappen. When you look at how most people travel in that area, which is public transit, that's the majority. And then you look at normative travel time, which is 15 minutes. It's like, if Chicago's this big, you got this much of it. So it didn't matter how well you ranked because they didn't care. They're not going to travel across the city for you. They're only going to take public transit a certain amount of time. And this was
So a few blocks. You got a few block radius.
You get about 6 block radius. It was super small.
Yeah.
And this was before COVID, so that it really mattered because people were actually going to the offices. Post-COVID, it mattered a little less, but it still mattered a significant amount.
I remember thinking, Tony, when we got to the top of the organic listings in downtown Chicago, we were dancing, thinking we were just going to kill it.
Yeah.
And it was crickets. It was crickets.
I ran the same thing. It's very frustrating. But so that's one of the biggest things is looking at you take a Google map and you also take this travel time thing and you overlay those two things together. And then you document what are all the cities here? What's my actual potential reach? So see your total populations. So like for this one that we just recently did, there are There are 6 cities in one of the regions that we suggested, and the total population of that is 142,000. But then what we actually want to do is we want to like cut that down significantly, because we know based on data, for every 1,000 people that are in a population every year, you're going to get about 1.2 to 2 divorces, and that's about what your population to divorce rate looks like. But that only matters. That gets skewed when your percent married has a significant deviation from the mean. So we look at what's the percent married. That's one of the things. We also look at age. So age we use as a proxy for quality. So we look at 3 different age groups: 25 to 34, 35 to 54, and 54 to 65. And like what we're looking for there is, again, that population to be clumped in those buckets, because those are going to be our potential buyers. We're also looking at income. So what we want to see here is over 75 to under 200 when we're looking at this. I don't have perfect correlated data on this, but we can say, based on our experience, is the higher the income level in a particular area, the lower our conversion rates. We presume that's because typically in a significantly higher income, especially when you're starting to talk $200, $250, $300,000, there's relationships with CPAs and accountants that they already have, and referrals are going to come higher there than traffic online.
Yeah.
So those areas aren't actually great if you're going to be driving a lead gen online business. That's another thing we look at. What percentage falls between that 75 and 200? And then we take all the percentages against the total population, and what we're looking for is, in each category, married, age, and income, that we have at least 70,000 people. And if we don't, this really isn't a sustainable area that we're going to be able to drive traffic from.
So this recapping the formula that you're laying out here is you're looking at a particular geographic area, and in there you're measuring, or you're collecting data for the age. Is there an age range that you're looking for?
Yep. So it's between, you're looking for 25 to 64. That's kind of the.
Okay, so basically marriable age here. Okay,
Yep.
And then the marriage rates, you're looking, that 1.2 to 2 divorces per 1,000 people per year.
Yeah, and your average divorce rate is going to look closer to, I think it's like 52%. Yeah.
Okay.
So like this example I gave you, there's one of the larger cities in the sample, they're only 32% married. So like I want the population to be decreased when I'm looking at my last analysis, because this isn't actually a good target for me for getting divorces out of this population, because most of them aren't married.
Okay. And then you're looking at drive time, and you want that to be sub 20 minutes.
We look at 15 and 30, and then we overlay the Google map on top of that. So we'll use a cool tool called, what used to be called local biking, local brand manager. So we use a tool called local brand manager, and we lay a map on top, and then we basically do an analysis to see how far do firms that are performing decently reach in that, to determine like what's the actual potential reach of this particular area. And it's all just a proxy. If we could actually if we could pull data from Google's GMB database of everything, what we'd see there is a density by zip code. The higher the density of family law firms in an area, the smaller the drive time expectation is going to be. Fewer, the lower the density, the greater the drive time expectation is going to be. And you're going to see that across all different service types. It's not just divorce. It would be, you pull that for grocery stores, you pull it for painters and roofers and dentists and tax accountants and all of the different types of services that you could potentially use in an area. That's what you're going to see, that same exact situation occur.
Yeah. Well, hello, Jeff here. My team and I put out a weekly newsletter designed for family law practitioners to help you grow and build your practice. So if you go to my website at jsterlinghughes.com, that's Hughes, that's jsterlinghughes.com, and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And what I will do for you there is I will send you weekly content to help you build and grow your practice, as well as news and developments in the greater world of family law. Thank you, and back to the show. And then you're also looking at income, and you're in particular 75 to 200,000 is our sweet spot in family law.
Yeah.
Those are folks that tend to look online to find their attorney and so forth. They don't have pre-existing relationships built in because of business relationships or what else.
Right.
So the 70,000 people, are you looking for a GO with 70,000 people that fit all of those criteria?
For each category, we're looking for, we're looking to achieve 70,000. Yeah. So like in this example, I said there's 142 total.
Mm-hmm.
For ideal married, we got 77. For target age, we got 82. For income, we got 106. And our average overlap is 88,000. So this is
Perfect.
A region that we want.
Yeah. And in that region, do you recall what the normative drive time would be?
Yeah. So this one was smaller because it's in a bigger, more dense area.
Okay.
So
that needs to be under sub 30, under 15 minutes drive.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the example you gave earlier.
This is really what we found down in Illinois. This is why we have offices where we have them, because that's the density quotient we're working with.
Yeah. So just to elaborate on that a bit. So we've got offices in really dense areas of the Chicagoland area, like, Naperville and Arlington Heights, Evanston, and that sort of stuff. And then we also have offices in Wisconsin that are in very rural areas, like,
right.
Lake Delton, which is the Dells, or way up north in the Fox Valley. So we really run the full gamut. And what we have found is that you can tolerate driving in a rural area for 30 minutes. You don't tolerate that driving 30 minutes if you're in a dense area.
Correct. Yeah, it's just not your normal expectation of life.
Okay.
Like I was living in St. Cloud. I lived there for like 6 months. The closest thing to me was a gas station 20 minutes away. If I wanted to go to a grocery store, it was like a 45-minute drive. And I was like, this is why I don't live out here.
Yeah.
But I lived out there for 6 months because it was terrible. So I ate a lot of frozen pizza during that time.
Yeah.
Sticks.
And interestingly, from an anecdotal standpoint, we have found that our best performing offices have been in these rural locations.
Correct.
Financially, they perform just as well as our dense area locations in Chicagoland area, which is
we typically
totally counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think it's because we see significantly less skewed or less bell curved incomes.
Mm-hmm.
Most are falling into that range. Most are falling into, like, there's higher percentage married. Like they fit these categories better.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they perform better. I don't think it's necessarily one thing or the other. I think there's just that. Well, I think the other thing, again, we can't prove this, but anecdotally, we think it's because there's a lack of law schools nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the likelihood of, going to school for 4 years, get your bachelor's degree, going to the big city, because that's where all the law firms are, getting your law degree, and then moving way back to rural wherever, to not have any of the amenities you just got used to for the last 7 years of your life.
Lawyer competition has got to be a factor in it, right? Because there's fewer lawyers in these smaller rural areas.
Correct.
So the upside is that they're really profitable. The downside is this lawyer recruitment. That's what we've discovered.
Yep.
Very difficult. So with respect to choosing a location, let's say you've picked out your community that you want to go into. Talk about selecting the actual office. How do you go about that? You're looking at traffic patterns, proximity to the courthouse, which seems to be popular. How do you select that?
Typically, we're looking at which of the cities in that total potential region have the best metrics here that we just talked here, the highest.
Okay.
So that way, that's where you're going to have the least amount of friction from a drive time perspective and all of that. Ideally, it's not super far away from the county court, and create a lot of drive time for your team. But you kind of got to balance what's the positives and negatives based on where you're looking. Because you might, if it's a big county, courthouse might be in a smaller city that is further south, and the biggest, best city in that county is, on the north, and you have to make a decision.
And I personally don't think clients really think about proximity to courthouse. They think about proximity to them, right?
Correct.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Whereas the lawyer thinking about proximity to courthouse because they got to drive there every day.
Correct.
So it matters more to them. But for client acquisition, go where the clients are.
Yep.
Yeah. So and then with respect to selecting the building, I know in the past we've used these shared office arrangements like Regis and so forth. Talk to some of the best practices that we've learned in that particular issue.
So, it's really going to depend on usage. So, what I think has been an advantage for us over, I don't know, when did we install those door locks that have key codes on them? 4 or 5 years ago. We now have data on usage, so it's like super clear. There's no anecdotal, comments from the team because we know exactly how many people walk in the office and which team members.
So we put in a lock system just so we can fill out the details on that. We put a lock system in every one of our satellite doors. And in our current in our main locations, we could tell who's coming and going and when they come. And we would see people not even show up at a satellite office for 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That has now helped more inform and dictate future strategy. Previous to that, and especially previous to that and previous to COVID, it's much different after. We wanted in a non-hub location, which is where our team is going to gather most of the time, wanted at least a place for the clients to come in and sit, and then 1 or 2 conference rooms. That's really what we were looking for. That's the ideal. Typically, 500 to 600 square feet, something that you control. But we've had really good success with shared office locations. You run into potential issues with Google, so how you implement that on that side can be more complicated. On the lesser known shared office locations typically aren't flagged by Google, but your Regis's, they know where all of those are and they have them mapped. So those typically don't work.
Those don't work to get a map listing typically.
Yeah, they will get much more quickly. There's ways around it, but I would suggest not doing it because there's risk.
Yeah,
and that's
Well, as we've opened up newer locations, we do standalone. We're the tenant. We sign the lease. We commit to a couple years, whatever it is. That works better.
Yep. So, but really, make sure you're only getting what you need. So
So on that, when you talk about like a footprint for the actual office, you're talking about 2 rooms.
Yeah, basically.
One with a table and a couple chairs in it, and one with a table and a couple chairs in it, really.
Yep.
Right? Because the lawyers aren't working out of these offices. They're using them to meet with clients, for clients to come and do a deposition, whatever we have going on there.
Yep.
And they're not staffed when no one's there. When a lawyer's not there, we don't staff them with people for weeks at a time with nobody showing up.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest reasons we did the door locks, because the key scenario when you had as many locations as we had was quite a nightmare. It was handing off all of these keys and getting them copied, and the copy doesn't open the door. And we think about all the stories. And then you look like a wall with the client standing right next to you. So there's...
and I know we've had some issues in the past with security being a concern, especially for some of our ladies who go and they're meeting with a guy who's there for something that he did that was not good, and he's kind of a creepy kind of guy.
No.
How have we addressed that and handled that? It seems to have worked out well.
Yeah, we basically had a first and second option sheet that was basically automated through our Salesforce tool. So if, for instance, Holly would go to had a console that was going to be in Mequon, which is one of her unstaffed offices. At that time, I think it was Nicole was the first person on the list, and I think I was the backup for that one. Mm-hmm. So when that got assigned, we would get notified. That's where we go in the morning or whatever till the console was well, we could either continue working there for the day, go home, work from home, or come back to the main office. It's kind of how it worked. So that way, people that needed that more secure space because of whatever the legal situation, they felt a lot safer.
Anything else on your territory analysis that you've done or in selecting locations?
I mean, we've really tried to make it based on data. So like, we run into clients all the time that they want an office in the city they live in, but the city they live in is kind of like out in the non-populated, one more upper class income area. It's not a great place to put a location. So it's less convenient for you, but it's like make a data-driven decision, not a convenience decision if you want to grow your business. So, that would be the big things. And I would really try to make the decisions based off data and like let that guide you and make that the focal point of how you're doing selections. Because if it's not a good location, like you might be trying to fish where there's no fish, and you can't get upset about it if that's what you decided.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tony. And if someone wanted to talk to you more about this, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. You can reach out to RocketClicks, go to rocketclicks.com, fill out one of our forms. We'll be happy to talk to you. Tyler and Liam and Matt will be following up to see if you do that.
And I can just testify this has been one of the major drivers of our growth and success over the past 10 years, going from 0 to 15 plus million where we are today. So it definitely works.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this video on selecting a new office and how to do that from a formulaic, data-driven standpoint. If you found value with that, you're going to find also value going over to this video right here, staying focused on one marketing tactic at a time. And I'll see you over there.